Good evening, everybody. This is Bob Fitzgerald, Brave Haven Media. We are glad that you're here with us tonight. Tonight we're talking about earthquake safety once again. This is part 6 of our earthquake safety preparedness program, and tonight we're going to talk about checking for injuries and damage after the quake and kind of some other things to kind of protect you. So we'd like to thank West Valley City Fire Department for sponsoring this and making this possible tonight. Without any further ado, we will go ahead and start the program. Here we go. Okay. All right. So tonight we're talking about things you can do after the earthquake is over to make things a little bit better for you and your loved ones. Now, anytime that there is an emergency, anytime that there is something that is dangerous and threatens our family, we want to make sure that we are safe first. So first, take care of you and your immediate family. Don't worry about anything else. Make sure that you guys are okay. You should remember your emergency plans. Think about those things that we've talked about. Remember that aftershocks may and will cause additional damage or items to fall. So the first thing to do is, once everybody's safe, is get outside or get to a safe location. You should take your disaster supplies kit with you. Now, if you're trapped by falling items or a collapse, you need to protect yourself. Protect your mouth, your nose, your eyes. Protect them from dust and other items falling into them. If you're bleeding, put pressure on the wound. For example, if you had a cut on your arm, you put pressure on that wound and then elevate the injured part if you can. You should try and signal for help with your emergency whistle. We talked about the emergency whistles in an earlier segment. If you've got a cell phone, great. Or the other thing you can do is knock loudly on solid pieces of the building. You should do this by knocking 3 times every few minutes. Rescue personnel will be listening for such sounds. Now, once you are safe, you can then focus on helping others. And you need to also check for damage to your home and your neighborhood. Always protect yourself by wearing sturdy shoes and work gloves and eye protection if you've got it. This will help you avoid injury from things like broken glass and other debris. Also wear a dust mask if you've got one of those available to you. Now, one of the myths that's out there is that everybody's going to panic during the big one. There'll be a number that will panic, but it's a common belief that people always panic, and they always run around crazy and all that kind of things during the earthquake, and it creates more danger for others. But the reality of it is, and research has shown, that people usually take protective actions and then help others, both during and after the shaking. So we really kind of look out for each other, and that's the main thing. Most people don't get too shaken up about being shaken up. Generally, the shaking happens so quick before you realize it, you're going, wow. First thing you should do is always check for injuries. You should include in your first aid kit a guidebook. Another place to look is generally the front pages of a telephone book. It may have detailed instruction on first aid measures. It's always a great idea to get some first aid training. Now, you can only do so much. Remember, you might be on your own for some time, as fire and police departments will be overwhelmed, and public works. So you should use common sense. If a person is bleeding, put direct pressure on the wound and do the best you can. If possible, use clean gauze or a cloth. Now, if a person is not breathing, you need to administer rescue breathing. We would suggest that you contact the American Heart or the Red Cross for some training on that. If a person has no pulse, begin CPR, which is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Again, American Heart and Red Cross are great sources. Now, if someone is seriously injured, you shouldn't move them unless they're in immediate danger of further injury. Comfort them, give them all the things that you can, but unless their life is immediately threatened, don't move them. You should cover people with blankets and additional clothing to keep them warm, as hypothermia can be a great problem, especially this time of year. Now, try to get medical help for the serious injuries. Carefully check children and others that may need some special assistance. The next thing we want to check for is damage to the structures. Now, one of the questions we've come up with is, what if there's a fire? Well, if possible, you can put out small fires in your home or neighborhood immediately. Always call for help, but don't wait for the fire department. Again, they may be not able to respond. Now, what about gas leaks in your home? One of the options is you can shut off the main gas valve, but only do that if you suspect a leak because of broken pipes or the odor or sound of leaking natural gas. If you do that, make sure that you do not turn it back on yourself. Wait for the gas company to check for leaks. Now, it may, depending on the situation, it may take days or weeks for that to happen. What about damaged electrical wiring and appliances? We should always shut off power at the main breaker switch if there is any damage to your house wiring. Okay, you should leave the power off until the damage is repaired. In other words, don't turn it off and because nothing happened, you turn it back on. How about broken lights and appliances? If they're broken, you should unplug these as they could start fires when electricity is restored. Now, downed power lines this is one that really scares me. If you see downed power lines, consider them energized and stay well away from them. Stay away. There's no reason for you to go, and keep others away. For heaven's sake, never touch down power lines or any objects into contact with them. For example, if a power line had fallen down over a chain link fence. Now, what about some fallen items? Beware of items tumbling off shelves. That's going to happen. Anytime you open a cabinet door or something like that, chances are things are going to fall out. And always remember aftershocks, aftershocks, aftershocks. Keep those things safe and keep a wary eye on those kind of things. Now, what about spills? You need to use extreme caution with spills. You can clean up any spilled medicines or drugs or other non-toxic substances without any problem. But there are potentially harmful materials such as bleach, dyes, garden chemicals, gasoline, other petroleum products, oils, solvents, those kind of things. Those things should be isolated or covered with an absorbent such as dirt or cat litter to knock down any fumes. When in doubt, leave your home. That's the bottom line. If there's something you're not sure of, leave. How about a damaged structure, damaged masonry? Unreinforced concrete is a big problem. So you should stay away from chimneys, walls made of brick or block, because they may be weakened and could topple. Now, the other dangerous thing is using a fireplace after an earthquake. You could start a fire or trap toxic gases in your home because of a damaged flue system. Now, what do you do if your home is dangerously damaged or seriously damaged? Let me just read this for just a minute. If your home is structurally unsafe or threatened by a fire or other secondary disaster, you need to evacuate. However, shelters may be overcrowded and initially lack basic services. So don't leave home just because the utilities are off. Your home and your contents may have suffered moderate damage. Now, if you evacuate, tell a neighbor and your family where you're going and things. And I always try to have that point of contact. We talked about that in a previous episode. I'd like to kind of go down a checklist, so to speak. Here are some things that you would want to bring to the shelter if you decided to leave your home and go to a shelter. First thing, your personal disaster supply kits. You should take, if you can, a supply of water, food, and snacks, as those things may be rare in a shelter. You should take a blanket, a pillow, and an air mattress if possible. Load a wheelbarrow up and take it with you if you have to. If you load up your car if you can drive to it. You should always take a change of clothing and a jacket. Those kind of things should be in your go bag. You should take a towel and a washcloth for personal hygiene. You should, if you've got babies and other things, you should take your diaper, your formula, and other supply for the infants. Some family pictures or other small comfort items, such as dolls and things for the kids. A lot of times that stuff helps them have that sense of oneness. Personal identification and copies of household and health insurance information. Should take some books, some games, especially for the children. Things not to bring to the shelter. Pets, unless they're service animals. And if you have to take your pet with you, bring food for them. Large quantities of unnecessary clothing or other personal items. Valuables that might be lost, stolen, or take up needed space. Now, one of the things that's not mentioned in there that I would like to mention to you is medication. If you have to have some medication, please take that stuff with you also. Now, these are just some tips that you can do and take with you as you after the earthquake or after the emergency thing. There are so many things we could talk about. We could spend hours and hours and hours and volumes and volumes and volumes of printed material and movies and those kind of things. The important things to remember in emergency. Number one, plan ahead. Come up with a plan prior to the event. That includes preparing that 72-hour kit, that go bag, those kind of things. Out-of-state contacts or out-of-area contacts and points of contacts for your family. Some cash, and we talked about that, some monetary things, because financial things may be down. And a first aid kit, have those things all kind of ready and in place and ready to go. So those are just some great things for us to remember. This is Bob Fitzgerald, and I just want to say thank you for joining us tonight. We hope this has been helpful. We hope this series has been helpful. We've got one more part in this series, and then we're going to kind of revise and edit this and make it a little more polished. But we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us and being with us and sticking with us. And we hope that everybody out there is safe, and we wish everyone health and happiness and prosperity in this new year that is approaching us. And on behalf of Brave Haven Media and West Valley City Fire Department, this is Bob Fitzgerald saying thank you very much for joining us.